So here I'm going to give kind of a personal finance talk. A lot of times I talk to groups at Northeastern Illinois University and talk about using economics and personal finance decisions. Here I'm going to talk about how to come out ahead when spending money. Basically, it's using some economic concepts, and if you're thinking about scams or thinking about overpaying for stuff. All right. A lot of this could be common sense because you think like, well, I know kind of what's a bad deal, but here we're just formally using a few economic concepts. Maybe if you practice it and think about it, then you'll be a little bit quicker in noticing if maybe you're being overcharged for something. Okay. So we're talking about what's the catch, really. Where are you losing on something? Something looks too good to be true. Sometimes it might be, and sometimes it might not be. But using economics will actually help you with that. All right. So a good deal could be a scam. Right? You're paying too much for something. Now, not everything high price is a scam, and not everything low price is good, and that's really important. What you're doing is you're comparing what you're paying to what something is worth. Right. The true value. A lot of that is costs, but people don't really understand all the costs that go into stuff, so they might either lowball or think something should be cheap, or they're charging too much for something. Okay, so you can pay $20 for something legitimate. Maybe it's worth $20. That's worth it. That's good. But if you pay $2 for something worthless, you think, well, I'm getting a deal because it's cheap. Well, compared to zero value, you're actually losing here. So you might have to worry about deals at any kind of a price point. You might pay $20 for something worth $30. Okay, and then you're actually coming out ahead. You might say, well, what's the catch? Why am I getting $10? Where am I? I got to lose somewhere. It's got to even out. There's some real reasons why businesses might want you to give you a good deal, and then it's business for them. It might not actually be a scam. So sometimes the deal isn't bad. So we're going to use a few economic principles to find out. The big concepts we're going to talk about are the idea, and this is the big one: businesses are rational profit maximizers. What rational means is they make smart decisions using good information. Okay, so businesses know what they're doing. They're not out there to lose money. They're not perennial losers. Okay, they're making good decisions. And they're trying to make as much profit as possible. Now, that's not a bad thing in business. That's the incentive for businesses to exist, is to make money. And we do that too as workers. Maybe we have our own businesses. We're not out to lose money either. So profit is good if it's a fair deal, if it's not a scam, if it's not exploiting people. All right. Profit is revenue minus costs, and revenue is price times quantity. So if I sell 10 items for $5 each, that's $50 revenue, but that's not pure profit. I have to subtract out the costs. Okay, and so then I keep whatever is left over, but I have to know what these costs are. Right? So these are the ideas: rationality, prices, costs, and profit. When I talked about the math for profit, you assume businesses are making a profit. If you think they're losing money, they might not be. So either they're cutting costs or saying something is higher value than it is. But we're going to talk about rationality and prices and costs, and we'll actually talk a little bit about where prices and costs come from. Now, sometimes businesses pretend that they're not rational. Back in my day, they had a crazy TV Lenny. He was an appliance salesman with commercials on TV, and basically, he was saying, "I can't set my price properly, right? And so if I'm selling for too cheap, you're making a deal off of me." Well, no business is going to exist for long doing that. It's just kind of a ruse. Car dealers will do that. They'll say, "Oh, I don't know." They'll say, "We ordered too many cars. We have to sell them at a loss." That's really not what's going on. They're just telling you that so that you think that you're making money at their expense. Now, buying and selling a car is kind of a weird game where people do try to set expectations, and you try to lower the price and negotiate. But some car dealers are known for that. That they just don't know what a car should cost, and then you can take advantage of them. But most likely, they know what they're doing, and you're not coming out ahead. You should assume that if the business still exists, they're not losing money. Right? They'd be long gone. So it's kind of a game people play, but some stores do kind of, I've heard about antique stores setting up, the merchandise kind of not in perfect order, so you might feel like you found some sort of a deal, but really everything's cataloged and on eBay somewhere. So, sometimes people do pretend to be irrational. One thing I just want to add, I talk a lot about banking and interest rates, is that banks used to kind of have a reputation for taking off and with your money and closing down, but then they started to build big stone buildings to show that they would be around for the long haul. And nowadays you have banks that are online, and they say, look, we're saving money on those big stone buildings. We don't have a big building. We're all digital. But really, you have to assume that businesses, so a lot of times they actually spend money to look like that they're not going to be scammed. All right, but banks have a lot of strategy, or businesses in general have a lot of strategies to earn your trust. but assume that they're not in there to lose money. You are probably not taking advantage of them. All right, so where do prices come from? If you've taken economics, you know about supply and demand. Supply is basically costs and demand is benefits. And people forget that one side or the other exists, okay? People will pay a lot for something if they want it, all right? And you say, well, why is something so much? It's because people will pay for it. If nobody wanted to buy it, the business wouldn't exist either. Supply is the cost, but you have to know all the costs that go into it. And people sometimes miscalculate that. They wonder why something's so expensive. They think something should be cheaper than what it is because they don't know what goes into it. Right? So one example I always give is if I bake $12 cupcakes. Now, if I did it, it should take not a lot of time, an hour, and it should take, I would get the cheapest box of ingredients, so the materials are cheap, and so it should be pretty easy to make. If I charge you $12, I'm ripping you off. All right? Now, if I'm really bad at making cupcakes and be like, look, it took me a day to do it, I'm going to get my money back because it was really hard. Don't buy my cupcake. Go to someone who doesn't waste time. Go to someone who knows what they're doing. So if I take cheap ingredients and a little bit of time or whatever, this is way too much. I'm ripping you off. But a good $12 cupcake might actually be worth it. One, it could be good ingredients. It could be made by a talented baker who went to school, and that's part of the cost. And so you might actually pay $12 for a cupcake, and it's worth it. Other people might laugh at you and say, why would you pay $12? That's demand. If people want it and it's worth it, they should get it. So don't forget demand, and then don't forget the costs that go into supply. Second thing, people say, well, anybody could paint that. When they're talking about art, they look at dots on a canvas. They say, well, why is that selling for $1 million? That's demand. People want it. It could be a famous artist, and you say, well, I could do that. It's because art is not just the cost. It's not a factory making paint, right? The cost might be low just to put the paint on the page, but there's the art, there's the talent, there's the training, and then that's the costs, and then the demand is just the people who actually pay for it. All right, and so and this happens a lot when you look at like companies like Amazon that have low prices because they can push prices down, they push costs down. For example, they can sign agreements with suppliers and get a good price from wholesalers, but the other thing is they're criticized for paying low wages, for example. Then you say, well, why is Amazon so cheap? Why can't my business be that cheap? Well, maybe your costs are higher. Maybe you have a physical store. All right, and so if you forget the cost, you think everything should be cheap, right? But when you're on the other side, you say, wait a second, my business shouldn't be cheap. I went to school. Maybe you're a freelance artist, and you say, well, people want you to do artwork, and they want to give you $1 for it, and they say, well, I could scribble on a page, and you say, well, no, I'm actually better than that. So I deserve more because I have talent, and I put work into it. I have materials I paid for. I have education to pay for, and so those costs are higher, right? So there's a lot of tendency in the U.S. to think everything should be cheap because people just think of the bare minimum cost. Really, costs are higher. When you are the seller rather than the buyer, you should think about that. Your fair price might be higher than other people might want because you know the true cost. All right? So prices can be higher than normal. And if you're the buyer, you should always look at the typical price, right? Is something worth, an apartment? How much should it cost in that neighborhood? How much should a product online cost? You should know the typical price, and that's basically the market should choose the correct price. And a lot of times you can find the true price from other sellers in the market. And a lot of times companies can hide the true price behind math, right? If something is, 5 for $1 and you say, okay, that's 20 cents each, you realize maybe something else is 10 cents each, right? So a lot of times things are hidden behind math. Knowing math, as I always say in economics class, is worth it because if you do a little bit of math, you might save a lot of money. Okay, so prices could be high just because somebody wants to make a little bit extra money, but sometimes they're high for a reason. And so high prices might be typical. A bottle of water at the airport is really expensive. There's security to get past, and they have you as a captive market. They have sort of a monopoly that they've purchased. All right, and so if you say, why is this $4? There's no recourse to it. Don't drink it then. All right, but there's some economics behind that. All right, don't overpay if you don't have to. If you don't want to buy a $4 bottle of water, find a way to not do it. Put your mouth under the faucet in the sink or something. But there's no way that a bottle of water will be like Walmart prices at the airport. All right, so there's economics behind it. But if you do see, obviously if you see something too expensive, don't buy it. All right, now, if price is too low, there's a lot of reasons for it. Okay, so one thing is that businesses might have high quantity. All right, it basically has to do with the elasticity of the price. If you can have a high quantity and a low price, you can make a lot of revenue. Right, so some products do that, and low prices are legitimate because of the fact it's a pricing strategy. Another thing is that they have legitimately low costs. Businesses that have experience can get better at doing something. It's easier to do something. If I'm bad at baking cupcakes, but I do it a lot, I get really good, I get efficient, I could have low costs over time, and so then you can lower your price and still make a profit. There's also something called price discrimination. Some businesses actually have different prices for different markets, and the classic example is like a student discount. Students have lower price because the seat gets filled and it actually is still profitable. Older people pay more, and so then it's able to split the market and make profit off of both. All right, so there's some economics there too. Sometimes prices are low, actually below cost, because people want to get you in the door. They want you to earn, they want your future business. A lot of corporations, I mentioned banks and the big stone buildings, businesses actually have a long game, right? They want to get, they might think of the second, third, fourth, 10th time, get you in the door, get you as an established customer, and then you pay regular price after that, and they're making money overall. There's really nothing wrong with that. Now, you could have a strategy of just taking the free deal and never coming back. You actually could win that one, but businesses actually know that it's easier to keep a customer than to get a new customer. Okay, so it's actually a one-time loss expected to make profit in the future. Okay, or they can get you in the door and then you buy other stuff. You get a free drink, you're buying more pizza at the restaurant, and then they make money there too. All right. So that's legitimate. Other times, a low price is not a scam. They're not out to hurt you, but there might be a mistake. Some items are mispriced, right? People put the wrong price on the shelf. There's my favorite online is warring pricing bots. Sometimes people, they automate their sales on Amazon and they say, if my competitor lowers their price, lower mine. But there's two that see the other lower the price and they keep warring the price down and fighting and pushing the price down to zero. Right? That's a mistake. Sometimes people find really low airline tickets and it's something the computer did, and then if you see it, you can do it. They're not out to get you. It's just a mistake. Another thing is imperfect information. Thrift stores might have, they're better at this now because they have people who know what they're doing. But a lot of times every book is 99 cents, and what if something's really worth more? All right. And I see people going through CDs, I see people going through books looking for that. That's actually a reward for their knowledge. All right. If you go through and you can find that rare book, you're getting paid a profit. Thrift stores are getting better at getting the profit themselves. They have people who do it, so then they can sell the market. They can go on Amazon and sell it and make the money for their organization. All right. But if everything's 99 cents, you might get a deal. Or there might be some mid-level person that's going through all the thrift stores looking for that deal. They're basically taking that gap between the true price and the sales price. There's not a scam, right? It's just that somebody doesn't have the resources to find the true price, and they might sell it for less than what's worth. Right? Everything else I mentioned is kind of a fluke. You're in the right place at the right time, you might actually get a deal. Okay, so that's understanding price. It's got the two sides, the costs and the benefits and the supply and the demand. Now, when you understand costs, I kind of mentioned this before, but you need to understand that costs exists. One thing I've seen is like used clothing sites where you can sell stuff in your closet and make a profit. It's not pure profit, right? Because you paid for the clothing. Okay, now people forget that. If you sell something that's not pure profit, not just revenue. The cost, if you're the seller, could be labor, materials, or education. I mentioned an artist that actually puts time into it and has equipment. And then actually the training to be good at it, that's all part of the cost, right? The cost of painting a picture is not simply just, pulling out a paintbrush and just doing something. Okay, so you have to actually calculate the costs accurately, right? I mentioned this Amazon effect. People just have this idea they want the lowest cost. They don't want to pay for shipping. People will actually pay $4 more on the sale price to get free shipping than to pay $4 less plus $4 for shipping. It makes no sense. But people want the lowest cost. They don't think about what goes into it. Same thing with airline tickets. People will want the lowest airline price and they'll pick that, and then they realize once you pay for the bag and the peanuts and whatever, you've got, it actually adds up to the same. But airlines know psychologically people want the lowest price, and then they'll add on after that. All right. Now, I talked about the high efficiency, right? Businesses can be cheaper because they're good at what they do. All right, but it could be the sign of a scam. And so the one thing I want to point out, if someone says they're still making a profit with low prices, it's because of low costs, right? But sometimes people have weird stories explaining why something is so cheap, okay? And I tell these stories, and I'll give you a couple examples in a second, but there's a lot of stories like my costs are cheap because, and it makes no sense. So that's really the thing to think about. If someone comes up to you and says, I can, I'll charge you $100 for that. You say, well, shouldn't it cost $1,000? Well, it's because I know a guy, or it's because of this, it's because of that. That is really one sign of a scam. When people have a really outrageous story explaining why something is so cheap. And that's, so we know that we've talked about the profit right there. So they're rational, right? Remember those four concepts. They're rational, they want to make a profit. We've talked about what profit is. Then they name a price, and you say, okay, that sounds low. And I know that you need to make a profit, so the only thing that can make up for it is costs. Now, again, Amazon, right, good or bad, has low costs because they've sort of worked out some efficiencies, fair or not. But other times it might just be a random person. Okay, so here's some examples. Some of these are have to do with these ideas. And some of these are scams and some are not. So you see a restaurant, it says kids eat free. All right, this is not a scam, right? It's not like some trap where they, all of a sudden they get you. Because you kind of know what you're into, right? If there's a family with 2 kids and 2 adults, the kids will eat free, but the parents will eat, all right? And then they're going to pay money there too. And then sometimes with the money you're saving, you get dessert, all right? So they might actually get money there anyway, but now they've gotten you in the door and you're going to spend money. That's not a scam, okay? This one clearly is a scam, but they talked about this long ago, the driveway scam. Someone comes through your neighborhood and says, look, we've been doing driveways in the neighborhood. Someone canceled. We've got all this asphalt, this paving equipment. We can't reuse it tomorrow. We just have to use it. So you're in the neighborhood. Do you want your driveway repaved? I don't know how much these have done. In Chicago, I saw the meat guy driving around with extra meat on a truck. It's sort of the same idea. It's going to spoil, I got to use it. And then that's sort of the weird story. Like, look, there's a cost involved. I have to get rid of this material. You benefit off of me. Now, the driveway scam was that instead of it being black asphalt, it was black paint. And so it really was doing zero work at that low cost, okay? And so this is like an urban legend. But this is a bigger kind of an idea that someone comes through and says, like, one time only, I've got this thing. You say, how can you make money doing that? It's because of some weird factor that only exists once. And so that's the thing to look out for. How are your costs so low? In this case, it was because it was black paint. The $500 car, I've been offered many of these in my day. Why is the car only $500? My story was that I asked how many miles were on it, and he said, I don't know, the computer reset. So it's probably extremely high mileage. At one point, I thought about selling a car for $500 just because I knew it needed a lot of work. This could be a scam or not. If you ever buy a car, get it checked out and stuff. But a lot of times, this is just because somebody they don't know the quality of it. They don't think it's great quality. They just want it gone. All right, a car is actually costly to get rid of. And so this could be a deal for you. All right, but what about a $1,000 Ferrari? Now I give you the type of the car and you say, hey, I know this should be thousands of dollars. Why is it only $1,000? In this case, it's a scam. And again, this is another urban legend. Usually somebody will say like, oh, we're splitting up and I'm getting rid of the car, but I don't want the other person to make a bunch of money, so I'm going to really screw this other person. All right, there's a story there, right? I'm selling it for so cheap because I'm trying to hurt the other owner of this. That's something to watch out for. Okay, so again, if someone offers you a car, you say, what's the catch? This is probably quality, and there's ways around that, right? Get it checked out. You might get a good deal, or you might say, look, I got to put $2,000 into this. Still $2,500, still a good deal, right? Cheaper than buying a new car, okay? That could be worth it. That's real economics. Somebody's got a story, and it could be, I don't even know, right? There could be a scam in here, all right? Another story of mine, my $10 silk necktie, I knew this place, they claimed that the owner, it was actually a place that sold pearls out of a kiosk in a mall outside Buffalo, all right? Don't ask. But $10 silk necktie, and the worker said, oh, there's a story. The owner goes to China to get the pearls. All right, and then finds these ties. And you think, well, you're buying them straight from the factory. It's China has lower labor costs and stuff. But it was interesting because they said Armani on them, and I looked at the logo. And actually later on, I did research on all the fake Armani logos. Right, so clearly Armani is not going to be $10. The other thing is, if you looked at it, it was polyester. It was clear. And I said, well, $10 for a polyester tie, I'll take it. Bought it, but I was not scammed because I knew it wasn't silk. Right, I could tell the difference. And I'm telling the story, so it's worth it on that too. But it is not, you can say like, well, I want to, in this case, it's clearly counterfeit. But if it's not clear, you say, I want to do the research. Yeah, I want to find out, what does silk look like? What does Armani look like? Because clearly you lose money on the real deal. All right. The story was that cost rule. Okay. Now, final one, this is actually not a scam. If you ever buy furniture, they might have something like 6 months, same as cash. In other words, they'll give you credit for 6 months, right? You make the payments, you get it paid off entirely in 6 months. And that's really important. You pay 0 interest. It says interest-free loan. What's the catch? The catch is that a lot of people can't pay it off in 6 months. Something happens or they just don't have the money. You pay it off. Anything later than that, they will charge you all the interest, the back interest that you should have paid. Okay, so that 6 months same as cash is not a scam if you do it right. You get an interest-free loan from them. The problem is that many people cannot do it. And so if you are one of the people who takes advantage of it, you do come out ahead. You're using economics. You're actually following what they ask for. How do they make money in general? They're actually making money off of all the people who can't do it. And in a way, is it predatory? They assume some people can't pay. Yes. And so part of it, and I talk about this elsewhere, part of it is that you get the deal that other people can't. You can come out ahead. And that's kind of the big idea, is that if you use the economics, right, you can say, this is legitimate. I'm getting interest-free loan. You know what interest is. You know that that you're saving money on that. If you're smart and disciplined, you actually will make a little bit of money and save a little bit of money because you're actually using the economics education. All right, so those are just a few economic concepts: rationality, prices, profit, and cost. All right, we're really talking about figuring out how something is appropriately priced, right? Thinking about the cost involved, thinking about what the market says, looking at other people's charging and stuff like that. Thinking about company makes money, right? They're out to make a profit, but hopefully not too much, right? And then you understand their objectives. And so then the idea is that you can pay the right price. It could be high, it could be low, but it matches the costs and the benefits. You can avoid a scam if those costs and benefits don't line up. And then what I kind of ended on is this idea that some offerings do exist that get someone else. Other people are getting hit with interest charges, right? If you do it in a way that you don't pay those charges, you actually do come ahead. So what's the catch? It's the catch is a real one. It's paid by someone else, all right? But these come up in all sorts of things. Some businesses have a strategy to hook you, get you in the door. Other ones really are scams. But if you can really think about that profit motive and think about how costs and prices line up, then you could save a little bit of money, all right? Please contact me with any questions, and thank you for watching.